Hello, I'm Beth Britton. I support dementia community with their communications work. Welcome and thank you for joining us for our final webinar of 2024. Before we get into our topic for today, I wanted to briefly explain a little bit more about Dementia Community. Dementia Community is a charitable community benefit society, a membership cooperative that provides learning and networking opportunities for the dementia care community. We are an independent voice and inclusive organisation, aiming to help all of our members feel connected, informed, inspired, empowered, purposeful, and engaged in co-produced changes that improve everyone's experiences of dementia, both in care and in wider society. This webinar is just one example of the many ways in which we do this. Community members own a £1 community share in Dementia Community, and membership is open to everyone. So if you aren't already a member, do join us. There are both benefits and opportunities for all of our members. My colleague David will put a link into the chat that will take you to our membership page. If you are having any difficulties in joining Dementia Community, please do message David or myself and we will aim to help. So on to today's webinar. So our topic for today is the gift of connection and communication. I will introduce you to our speaker shortly, but just some brief housekeeping first. We are recording this webinar, so if you don't want your face on the recording, please turn your camera off. We will use the chat for your questions. We will have a Q&A and discussion after the presentation, and we'll be keeping an eye on the chat. We hope to have some live participation too. So if you'd like to ask your question yourself, please raise your hand when we get to the Q&A. Afterwards, David will email you with the slides. The recording will also go onto our YouTube channel, the Journal of Dementia Care. So do look out for that. We will also send you a feedback form afterwards, and we would be very grateful if you would complete that. So let's get started. Our speaker for today is Vicki de Klerk-Rubin, who is the Executive Director of the Validation Training Institute and Master Validation Teacher. Vicki, welcome. Over to you. It means everyone hasn't got to listen to my croaky voice, which is wonderful. Welcome, and we look forward to hearing what you're going to tell us today.
Thank you so much for having me here today, and I'm delighted to be joining you. And I'm going to be talking about the validation method, which was developed by my mother, Naomi Feil. Very simply, validation is a way to connect and communicate with older adults who are experiencing cognitive decline. And that's a term I prefer to use than dementia, because that feels to me like demeaning, putting them down. So in validation, we talk about the disoriented older adult. So I'm going to share my screen and share just a few slides with you. And I've also got a little video for you. I hope everybody can see my screen. Is it good? I hope so. So what is validation? Validation is a combination of three important elements. You have the basic validating attitude, which means when I approach another human being, I am being honest, I strive for integrity, I show respect, I use emotive empathy, which means I go into their emotions rather than my emotions, and I try not to judge the other person. These sound very simple, but they are actually quite complex and difficult to attain. They require some practice. The theory of validation is based on 11 principles that were developed by Naomi Feil, and they explain our vision of aging and why we use the word disoriented rather than demented. It gives us also our goals, what we want to achieve with validation. Yeah. Then we have techniques. The techniques are quite simple, and everybody wants to learn them. But I promise you, the techniques without the basic attitude are not going to work. And I'm going to stop for a minute. The techniques without the basic attitude are dry and they are not so effective. And using the basic attitude with the techniques, but for the wrong reason, is also not going to, you won't reach your goals. And let's talk about the goals of the validation method. There are short-term goals and long-term goals. In the short term, we want to build trust, find empathy, and try to suss out the needs that are being expressed by the older adult. Long-term goals include better communication, more communication if the person is very withdrawn. We want the older adult to feel acknowledged and respected, and so they feel they can die with peace. That is the long-term goal. I want to show you a little video. I hope not everybody has seen it. Where's my video? Oh, it's in the PowerPoint. I was too clever for my own good. I hope you all can see this and will be able to hear this.
When people are very old and deteriorated and no one enters their world and they're just sitting there, they will withdraw inward more and more. And their desperate need for connection is all now inside. And if a person is all alone, even if they're very, very deteriorated, there's a longing for this kind of closeness. Mrs. Wilson? Hello. You want me to sit? Can you see me good? Gladys Wilson is a wonderful example of a person who is in the phase of repetitive motion, where people use movements, repetitive movements, because they don't have any more speech or very little speech, but they have human needs that need to be expressed. You're crying. You're crying. You have a tear right here in your face. You have a little pain. You don't want me to touch you. You're very sad. Can you see me? Is it scary? Are you afraid? And if this person sits with their eyes closed, rocking back and forth, and maybe there's a tear coming down, there's a need there. Here. There's a little tear that's coming out. Do you feel it? You feel a little tear? If you gently use touch, and I touched Gladys Wilson for the fingertips right here on the cheek, is where the mother usually touches a child. If you touch an infant there, it looks up, and every cell remembers where it was touched by the mother. And often that person knows, even if they can't say a word at that moment, they won't talk, or they don't want to talk, but there's a communication. And that person is no longer alone. Can you let me in a little bit? You think? Just a little? You think I could be with you and Jesus for a minute? Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. I used music, because when speech is gone, music, especially with Gladys Wilson, it was religious music, because there's emotion tied to it and safety tied to it. So I used her old church songs. Jesus loves me, yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me, the Bible tells me so. What I did was, when she moved, I moved with her. And when I was singing, because she didn't sing with me, so I matched the intensity of my voice to the intensity of her movement. And pretty soon, for a split second, we became one person. Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so. So at one point, when she got very quiet and very peaceful, and my voice became very quiet as hers and very peaceful, and my breathing slowed to her breathing, she pulled me to her, and I moved with her. And for her, at that moment, I believe I was a symbol of her mom. Can you open your eyes now? Do you see me? Feel safe and warm? Yes? Can you sing with me? He's got the whole world in his hands. 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 He's got the mothers and the fathers. He's got the mothers and the fathers in his hand. He's got the mothers and the fathers in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand. The breakthrough doesn't happen every time. The person will not always open their eyes and look at you. But if you keep trying and you keep centering yourself and really look at that person and really mirror their movements, maybe not this time, but the next time you come, you'll have a communication. You feel safe. You feel safe? Yeah. With Jesus? Yeah. And me?
So. I want to ask you, for those of you who would like to play with me, in the chat, what are the goals you were able to see in that video? Remember the goals I talked about earlier, which were building trust, finding empathy, and identifying the needs that the other person is expressing. And for the older adult, what did you see in Gladys? How did she change? Yep, trust was established. There was a need for connection, right? Nice. Right. By the way, Gladys had not spoken in, I don't know, a year, something like that. And everybody was stunned. Right. Music, or singing, I should say, is one of the techniques we use in validation with people who are not so communicative with words. And the reason for that is early learned songs are retained longer in the memory. People can lose words, but songs will stay there, especially if they are connected to strong emotions. Oh, I love all these answers. Thank you so much. Yeah. So how did Naomi do that? That's the question, because that's your takeaway. How can I teach you in just a very few minutes a few key skills that will help you connect with the older people in your lives? And actually, these skills you can use for almost anyone. And the first thing that Naomi does, and every validation practitioner does, is you have to center yourself. And centering in validation means clearing your mind of thoughts and feelings so that you can be sort of open to what's going on in the other person. So I'm going to lead a centering exercise now. I can't see you, and I'm going to close my eyes, and I invite you to put your feet on the ground. Don't cross your legs. Find a really comfortable position in your chair, or if you want to stand, you can stand. And I want you to think of a color that gives you energy. I'm going to close my eyes. I'd like you to inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. And inhale and exhale. And now I'd like you to imagine that the air surrounding your head is filled with this energy-giving color, so that when you inhale through your nose, you bring that color inside, and when you exhale, that color starts filling your body. Imagine that energy-giving color coming in through your nose and heading straight down to your toes. And start filling your body from the toes on up. Into your legs, your thighs, your hips, and your belly. Allow this energy-giving color to fill your chest and your shoulders, going down your arms and into your hands. And with one more large breath, fill your head with color. I hope all of you have energy-giving color throughout your whole body. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come on back. I hope that that was an effective exercise for you, just to give you more energy, to make you more present and quiet down. If you already have a practice that helps you reach that state, please continue that every day. And for those of you who don't, I strongly encourage you to find one. Find a short exercise, a long exercise, I don't care. If it's looking at a film of an ocean, a beach, or a mountain, that's great. But you need a way to put aside thoughts and feelings before you choose to connect and communicate with another human being. It makes a difference. If I walk into my work and my kids have been terrible and my husband didn't help me get ready today and he left me with a car with no gas, and so I'm late to work, and I walk in and there's Mrs. de Klerk again, always complaining, and now I'm going to try to validate her. It ain't going to work. Because all that irritation that comes in my life is going to get projected onto her. And that's not going to help communicate. So what I need to do is to say, all right, I'm really mad at my husband and my kids and the fact that nobody thought about me, and I'm going to put it in this little box over here. And I will get to you later. But now, I'm going to focus on Mrs. de Klerk. And that doesn't have to take a lot of time. We have a YouTube channel, so free for everybody. And it's, you go to YouTube and it's Validation Training Institute. And we've got tons of exercises that you can choose from. And if the visual exercise was not appropriate for you, throw it away. Find one that will work and do it every day. Because what happens for me now, I happen to be a visual person. I got that color in my head. And that's all the time it takes. But that's after years of practice. Okay? So that's your first assignment. Go practice centering every day. Now, the second thing that's oh, thank you, Beth. Beth put it in the chat. So all you have to do is click on that and you've got the YouTube channel. The next thing I want to bring to your attention is eye contact. Now, I've been focusing on the camera, talking to you like this, and I hope you feel that I'm talking to you. Now, let me demonstrate just how important eye contact is. I'm going to read, actually, this is from my mom's first book that she wrote back in 1982. Just feel what it feels like and write in the chat if you have any comments. Each human being is different and valuable, no matter how disoriented. Each stage of life has different goals. There is a reason behind all behavior. The helper must use empathy to tune into the reason behind the behavior. And now, disoriented old humans must tie up living to prepare for dying. They restore the past to make closure and to justify their lives. The worker's mission is to help disoriented old reach their goals by acknowledging the reason behind the behavior. So did you notice any differences between the two parts that I read to you? How did you feel? Was one more engaging than the other? Give me some feedback. Di says, in the first instance, you weren't talking to me. I felt more connected with eye contact. Way more connected with eye contact. Oh, that's nice. Okay. So could you really feel it? I think that's important to experience it yourself, because oftentimes what I see is I'm busy with my life and I've got to do this and I've got to do that and I want to help and I'm just going to open the window. How are you doing today? And I'm busy with 12 different things and I'm not focused. And if I'm not focused here with eye contact, the other person is not going to connect with me. And what's difficult about that is quieting ourselves to do one thing at one time. And that one thing when we choose, and you can't do it all the time because there's just lots to do in life. When you choose your moment, or when the other person really needs you, centering, making eye contact, super important. There's a couple of steps in validation that I'm skipping over, but I want you to have a few quick things. We don't have that much time. So here's another one. Distance or nearness. If I'm sitting back here and I want to tell you about something very intimate or something emotional, like I want to tell you about when my mother died last year. I can't do that. First of all, I can't even see you. My eyes don't focus that far. But if I'm here, you're in focus. And I feel more able to share. Does that make sense? So too far is no good if you want intimacy. Whereas getting too close, what happens here? Yeah, I see it. I see your reactions. I'm seeing a lot of people pulling back. You're in my face. I totally. Now, sorry about that. I hope the message gets across that sometimes we project our needs for closeness. Oh, I love you. I want to get close. Oh, I want you to be my friend. I want to get close. That's normal. That's human, but it's projecting our need for closeness onto the other. Is that clear? Cool. This all, I know it sounds simple, being aware of distance, but it really, it takes, again, quieting down, looking, because how do you tell if you're too close or too far away? Through observation. You've got to see the person pull back or see the person lean forward or see the person quickly inhale and the jaw tighten. And those are signs of anxiety, fear. And that may mean that I'm too close. Okay. The last little, I don't know if it's a technique, I would call it more a prerequisite, and that is paying attention to your voice tone. Very often we don't know how we sound. I'm trying to talk to you all with what I call an adult to adult voice tone on a peer level without projecting any of my emotions onto you, just sort of straight. However, sometimes, and this is what I hear often in long-term living, I'm going to say the same sentence in 3 different ways, and I would like you to write in the chat how you felt with all 3. Okay? Sally wrote a really great thing I want to come back to, and Beth, if you can remind me, some people struggle with seeing how close Naomi is to Gladys. Let's go to that when it's question time, okay? I get that. So back to voice tone. Good morning, Mrs. de Klerk. How are you today? That's number 1. How did you feel? Patronized. Condescended. A job to you. That's a Britishism that I'm not quite sure what it means. Not genuine, right? Not tuned into. Right. I'm coming from my needs. Maybe it's a need to be liked. Maybe it's, that's how I always talk to people because I think they need my help. I don't know. It's hard to know what's behind that voice tone, but it ain't about the other person. Here's the next one. Good morning, Mrs. de Klerk. How are you doing this morning? Too forceful, officious, nice, stern, abrupt, right. You are stressed. Exactly, exactly. I had 1,200 things going on in my head, and you're the last thing. Yeah, teacher, possibly. Okay, let's do the third one. Good morning, Mrs. de Klerk. How are you doing this morning? Okay. Super. You're hearing. You've tuned in to my voice tone, and I hope you recognize how important that is. And of course, if I come across with that authoritative, irritated voice tone, it's super easy for Mrs. de Klerk to then respond, what do you want? You know, really hard, because that's not what I intended, but that's how it comes across. So sometimes even our voice tone can stimulate angry responses. That can happen. Cool. And the final, do I have time for one more? I do. The last thing is ask, don't tell. I'm going to role play little scenes, and I would like you to put up your hand and when you think of a response, okay? And say the response. Asking without telling. That's the homework assignment or the assignment for right now. Is that clear? Am I clear? Somebody give me a nod of a head, or I'm not clear. Okay, thank you, Beth. It's clear. All right. I'm going to start. I have to go now. What time is it? It's looking very late. I think I have to get to the school immediately. The school, I'm going to be very late. Can you please open the door and help me get outside? How would you respond to that? Put up a hand. Or if you feel more comfortable, just write it in the chat. Okay. We have two suggestions. One is, say you're worried you have to get to the school. That's a rephrasing of what I just said. How can you turn that into an open question? Now, open questions start with who, what, where, when, how. Are you worried about getting to school? That's a closed question. I could say, yeah. And that would, conversation sort of stops after that point, and you have to keep asking questions. Whereas with an open question, what are you worried about at the moment? Well, I'm worried about getting to the kids. The kids are going to be standing there waiting for me. When do you pick the children up? Great question. Every day at 3:30. School gets out at 3:30. Now here is where the validation method differs from reality orientation or diversion or lying. We don't do any of that. We don't lie and say, oh, someone else is picking up the kids. You don't have to worry about that. And we don't divert by saying, I'm sure it will be okay. Let's go get a cup of tea. That's diversion. And we don't reality orientate by saying, Mrs. de Klerk, you're 85 years old and your kids are now 50. I think they're okay right now. That's kind, but it's confrontational. And that's also not validation. We walk the line in the middle. We just simply explore. Without judgment, we know the reality, but for some reason, this woman wants her children. What's that about? So my curiosity is piqued and I'm like, huh, did you always pick up your children at 3:30? And I might say, I was there every day at 3:30. And what did you do with them after you got home? Well, this one had sports and the other one had dance lessons. And now I'm talking about my kids and I'm feeling differently. I don't want to leave. I want to talk to you about my kids. So the reason behind the behavior is I'm missing being a mom. I'm missing having my kids around me. Does that make sense? So we explore. We do not confront. We don't lie. We don't divert. Without judgment and without playing a game. It's not a game. There's no acting involved. Remember, I talked about integrity at the top of this program, that being a very important quality for somebody who uses validation. What will you do when you pick them up? Nice question. You can ask closed questions, but you need a follow-up because the person's going to say yes or no, and then you got to come up with something else. When a person is verbal, sorry, I'm responding to Sally's comment in the chat. She says, that's interesting, as my understanding was validation focused on naming the feeling first. We would only name the feeling when the older adult is extremely withdrawn, like Gladys Wilson was, and it's a way in. It's a way of acknowledging, I see you. But if I'm verbal, I don't need to name the emotion. I just feel the emotion with the other person. Okay. I think it's a good time to switch to Q&A. And I'm open to any of your questions. While I wait for people to type your questions in, I'm going to go back to that one. Where was it? Beth, can you help me with that question?
I absolutely can.
It was about it was for me, Beth, I think, wasn't it? It was asking how when we show the video, sometimes people go, gosh, she's so in her face, you know, they're not feeling comfortable around Naomi's proximity. It's I mean, that video is iconic, first of all, Vicki. It's the most amazing film, and I have probably seen it a million times, and it still moves me in different ways. But it is interesting how some people don't react as positively. To me, it's such an emotional, amazing film, but some go, oh, like she's really invading her space, etc.
I get that. What that is a projection of your own need for distance onto the other person.
Yeah, yeah.
When we do training in validation, we do a lot of exercises on sensing the boundary of the other person. They're wonderful, fun exercises. And if we were in person, I would be able to do these exercises with you, where you can actually feel the other person's boundary.
Yeah.
And what Naomi did was she went to Gladys's boundary.
Mm.
Because that's very close. It is very
Yeah.
close. That's true. But Gladys needed that.
And the stroking of the cheek, which she mentions, is a very sort of maternal type, but baby, yeah, that's sort of incredibly
Not a baby.
visceral response to touch.
Naomi discovered 5 what she called anchored touches that for many, many, many people are effective ways of triggering emotion. It's not for everybody, but it is for some. The 5 are the mother touch. This is how a mother would touch a child. and it can give a feeling of being loved. That's when you would do that touch. When somebody is feeling alone and scared, and you do this with one hand or two hands, it doesn't matter. For many people, they'll just, oh. And for somebody who is nonverbal, who has withdrawn into themselves, it can help them open their eyes. It can help them feel safe enough to come. They've gone in because that outside world is not so interesting or frightening or uncomfortable in some way. So they withdraw. And in order to ask them, to invite them, come on out and talk to me, right? She was building a trusting, loving relationship with that touch. There's also the father touch and children's touch. And what else? Partner is under the jaw. If somebody is missing their husband or their wife, you can talk to them. You only use these touches with people who are really withdrawn. It's not a verbal technique, not to be used with people who are verbal. Okay.
That's really interesting, Vicki. Thank you. It's been fabulous to do something so interactive. I'm sure everybody would agree. It's been really interesting to try some of the techniques. While everyone's thinking about their questions, just a few comments from me, I guess. I love the idea of putting your worries in a box. And it's so true, because I'm mostly a stressed mother with 2 small children. And actually, you can, if you go into a situation whereby you're bringing your own baggage with you, you're quite right. You're not going to be focusing on that individual at all. It's not easy to do, though, is it? We do have all this stuff going around in our head. Any techniques, particularly to try and park this stuff for a little while?
Centering techniques. They work, absolutely. And take it from somebody who's been doing it since I was a mother with young children. Now my oldest is 35. So I've been doing these exercises for 35 years. Jeez Louise.
It's scary, isn't it? Yeah, it's a long time.
It is a long
my colour was
time.
yellow. With our centering exercise, my colour was yellow because I wanted to fill myself with sunshine, because I'm rather fed up with the gloomy British winter already.
Now, some people use a little stone. If you're kinesthetic, you can get a stone. Other people have an inner tune that you just hum inside your head, or perhaps it's the sound of wind, that sort of clearing things out. People respond to different things. And so I can give you one centering exercise in this session, but that's why I strongly encourage you to find the one that works for you. Okay? Because it really, Beth, it's the way.
Yeah. I'm going to try that when my son is having one of his little meltdowns. It'll be great.
Yes. Yeah. I remember I had one who did the terrible twos from 1 till 3. I mean, it was a very extended time. She had a lot to get out. And actually, learning validation made me a much better mother. I have to be honest with you, understanding the life stages and the importance of learning the lessons of each life stage. So when my daughter as an adolescent came to me and said, "You're the worst mother in the world," I had to go. I had been waiting for that from the moment of her birth. So I sort of went, right, I've done my job. You know, she needed a wall to push against. And I was that wall. So she was pushing hard. And I just held the wall quietly, doing my breathing, imagining my color.
What I
And
find
she's,
really interesting, and we need to get to the chat because there's quite a few comments in there now,
oh,
Naomi.
please,
Other
please,
people have
please.
noticed this, is when you talk, you don't talk particularly quickly and you leave little breaks. And that's a really, is that a technique particularly? Because we're always so tempted, aren't we, to fill a space with noise. But you don't. You take your time, and I really like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, let me get on to the question.
Okay.
So Di says, we desperately need validation training in the UK. How do we get it?
Thank you. I would love to offer it. It's one of my big goals. What you can do is send me a message. And once I get enough people, let's see, this, I'm going to put my, yeah, typing is as slow as my speech. Validation.org. That's my email. Let me know what kind of validation training you would like. We've got a ton of it. We've got very simple and we've got very complex. And what that means is, how deep do you want to go? Thanks for coming, Karen. I appreciate your being here.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for your answer, Vicki.
Sorry?
So thank you for your answer. So obviously your email address is in the chat for people.
And I just put in our website. And there you can see everything that we offer, from very simple training, online training, synchronous training, asynchronous training, and blended learning. One of these days, I would love to come over. I mean, I live in the Netherlands, so coming over to England is easy. And my daughter lives in London, so I would love to combine a visit to her with teaching in Great Britain.
Super. Thank you, Vicki. Right, some more questions. Louise says, I teach care home staff and they are often understaffed and very stretched. It's hard to encourage them to centre. That exercise should be helpful for them. So thank you. And that's probably a common issue you encounter.
Yeah. One of the things I suggested during the COVID craziness, that was, talk about stress. I suggested that every hour a bell be rung and everybody, staff, residents, administrators, know that bell means take a breath. And then they carry on with what they're doing. But people need reminders and permission to take care of themselves. Very often, caregivers are all about giving, and they forget about filling the tank. And they drain, and that's not healthy because you can't give if you don't have anything. So I would say the best thing you can do for staff is give them reminders, give them permission that every day at several points, they should just stop what they're doing and take a breath. And that's it. And then they carry on. I hope that's an idea that might work for some of you.
Brilliant. That's one for you, Louise, maybe to try. So Vicki says, lots of people ask to go home. I've always felt this was a need for safety. How would you validate that need?
People wanting to go home can mean a lot of different things. It could be, I don't want to be old and living in an old people's home. You know, denial of the whole aging process, denial of my loss of independence. It could be that I don't feel safe here. That's also possible. So what I would do is ask. I'd say, what's going on? I have to go home. Oh, is it that you need to be home or you want to get away from here? That's a clear choice. Now, I don't know what the person would answer, but depending on the answer to that question, I would explore further. And don't try to stop them, just engage them. Remember to center, to observe, to get eye contact. I often tell people, don't say a word until you have eye contact. Okay?
Super. Thank you, Vicki. Sally says, do you think mixing people up at different points in their journey is stressful for people? So I guess Sally's talking here about in care home settings where you might have some people who are more advanced with their dementia than others.
There are mixed theories about that, and I don't have one answer. I think it depends on the people. I've seen communities where there was the memory care unit, and that was in one part of the facility, and everybody else lived in the other part. That works. I think, what's the most important thing? Well, safety, one. Safety for either the disoriented or the oriented. You don't want people who are blaming, you know, oh, she's crazy, get her out of here. That's that can be hurtful. That's another kind of hurting. I really don't know. I've seen places that mixed very well, and I've seen places where it was separated, and that worked very well. I think it depends on your people.
It's very much a sort of cultural thing, isn't it? And the type of, and the mix of individuals. We're very nearly at the end, Vicki. There's so many lovely comments in the chat, people saying thank you, very insightful, very interesting, something they would like to use in their practice. Please come and visit soon. There are a couple more questions. I don't think we've actually got time for these very well. Amazing. So another book that is available.
Yes, this will help you. Still.
Thank you, Vicki. Do pop some links to David that he can circulate with the materials from the webinar so that people can find them after today. I'm going to very quickly let's just get to Diane's question. What happens if you don't have long? You're passing someone in a corridor and you're with another resident, or another resident is waiting. Do you have to be quick?
I would be very honest and say, I see that you're incredibly distressed. I don't have time right now. Can I come back in 5 minutes or 10 minutes? That's what I would do. Just be very honest, very straight. But again, take a breath, get eye contact, find the right distance. That all takes about a second, maybe. You get in there and you be honest. Does that help?
I think that does help. Yes. And Diane's giving you a thumbs up. But I'm going to have to draw this to a close, Vicki. It's been amazing. There are so many lovely comments in the chat. So many thank yous. Fantastic. You demonstrate centeredness in your being, even on Zoom. Absolutely, you do, Vicki. I love the fact you look at us. You really engage with us. I need to learn some tips from you. Di says, thank you. Amazing session. Can't wait for some training. Barbara, I love the honesty. So valuable. Michelle, thank you. It's been very interesting. Lots to take away. Just lots and lots and lots of thank yous. It's been absolutely brilliant, Vicki. So I just want to say thank you from all of us on the Dementia Community team for coming along today. I know we planned this many, many months ago, so it's been a long time in the waiting, and thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. I have to run. And thank you all. Bye.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you. So just for everyone else's diaries for next year, this is our last webinar of 2024, as I said earlier. We will be back, however, next year. We are delivering, hopefully, 20 webinars there or thereabouts next year. So do keep an eye on our webinar program. David has very kindly put a link in the chat for you. We take a break now until Tuesday, the 14th of January, 2025, when our first webinar of the new year will be around travel and tourism when you are living with dementia. How do you have a holiday? How do you make that work? So that's what we're going to cover as we kick off 2025. Lots of other topics as well. So please do keep an eye on that webinar link. If you're a member, all the webinars go into our newsletter as well. So do join us as a member if you haven't already. And thank you so much for coming along today. From all of us at Dementia Community, have a lovely Christmas and New Year, and we will see you in 2025. When hopefully I've got a better voice. Bye-bye, everybody.